Hello.
Rigby World Studios!
Hello. Today I'm going to do kind of a rundown under the hood on the production for the song Perfect by VadaWave. VadaWave, for those of you who aren't familiar, is Quinn Allman and Megan Joy Allman. We did a whole EP a while back. Of the songs that we worked on, I think this one may have been my favorite. It paints a picture of their love story. A couple of kooky artistic fuckers that don't take themselves too seriously but take their art and their love for each other very passionately and seriously. It's been a while since I've heard it all the way through, so I'm just gonna push play and see what comes back. We'll dive under the hood. If Pro Tools will work. Had me mix it too, going through the whole thing. It definitely looks patchwork. If I were handing this off to a mixing engineer, wow, I'd probably spend several hours just making it not look like a total train wreck. But it's perfectly imperfect. That's why we do this stuff. Well, wasn't that just goddamn adorable? Yeah, let's dive in. When I decide to get started on a song, whether I'm producing or co-writing or mixing it, first thing I try to do is get to the heart of what the song is. What perspective is my place? How can I help that song get to where it wants to go? And on this one, just the idea of knowing as humans that we're far from perfect, but there's this piece of perfection in their love story. And I thought of like grandma's old patch quilt that's been tattered and dragged through the mud and loved to death, but it's the one that smells a certain way that you like and it keeps you warm. It's the one that when everything else is kind of going to shit, that's the one, grandma's old patchwork blanket. And so that's kind of the image that came to my mind when they played me this song. I thought, what a beautiful way to approach the production as well. Quinn is a different kind of guitar player. There's this other thing where he's like a catch lightning in a bottle kind of guy. What my job to do was really create a space and an environment in the studio as far as tones and making things a safe place for him just to vibe and play whatever the hell was inspiring him at the moment and capture that like the little pieces of the quilt rather than trying to get like a perfectly crafted guitar part that works from beginning to end. And I made sure that our scratch tracks that we did, I've got a really cool old Fender Bandmaster out there that just never sounds bad, and then also a hand-wired Marshall. I think it's like a modded late 70s JMP or something, but it's like sounds like a Marshall. Made sure we had both of those on, mic'd up great, and capturing both things so that as Quinn's playing, if something's feeling like it needs a Marshall or it needs a Fender, both are running all the time, and I'm just using them as different patches for the quilt. And a lot of those scratch tracks are what we used for the final take. The other interesting part about this one, you know, we're parents. They had a son who stayed home from school sick, which is funny. My son stayed home from school sick today, you know, just one of those things. What was going to be a vocal and guitar day was just a guitar day. We needed some of her vocals to go off of for some of the scratch tracks that we didn't quite have yet. And so we sent her a few things and she listened in her earbuds and recorded on her phone or her iPad or something and sent those tracks back. And they sounded great. And listening back and looking at these, I think we used a few of them on the final vocal take. You know, granted, they came back in and we got some performances of Megan on this really nice vintage C24 mic that we've got. Of course, the early serial number Chandler TG2s that we like to use and early serial number EL7 Fatsos. They never suck and they always sound great. Tens of thousands of dollars of vocal chain gear and also some vocal performances that we're saying into an iPhone, and they both work and had their different places on this production and this song. And I just think that's so cool. A good reminder that what we're doing is making art and telling a story. Megan can just, you give her a mic and she will make it sound great with feeling. For drums, we had Ronnie Strauss come in. I mean, he's a good friend of ours. I know Ronnie from back in the day. It's been so cool to kind of watch his career grow as he's been doing more session work and touring and things. And he's just such a great hang. We took a similar approach where we had a couple of different kit setups. One real kind of earthy, artsy, and then another one that was more straightforward rock. We got some loops from him. He was doing this cool brush thing that made it sound like you put a record on. And we did kind of a hybrid of drum brush sounds, organic open sound with not a whole lot of like thwacky stuff going on, and then a second drum kit playing over top when it kind of opens up a little bit more like a traditional rock song. Once this was kind of fleshed out as a song and we had a lot of these quilt pieces and we were putting them into their spaces, the question came up of who's going to play bass on this stuff? Does it need bass on it? I was hearing bass and piano. I feel like most people know me as like a producer or singer, guitar player, songwriter guy, but I actually got my start with piano when I was like 5 and bass. I was itching, but I didn't want to insert myself, but they asked me and were cool with me playing piano and bass on this stuff. Oh. It was such a joy. Once the mix was done, I think it's really important to get a second set of ears. I like to send my mixes to Stephen Hawks for mastering, and I'm always so thrilled with what we hear back. Quinn and Megan, thanks so much for trusting me with this song, Perfect by VadaWave. What better story to tell than a perfectly imperfect love story?